In this video, I'm gonna be explaining everything you need to know about Django from starting to the very end. This video is gonna explain everything you need to make awesome websites using Django. I'll be walking you through each and every nitty-gritty from a beginner's perspective, and I can give you an assurity that after watching this video you'll be very comfortable with Django and it'll be easy for you to implement any Django feature of your choice. So let's get started. So in order to get started with Django, you need to have Python installed on your system. So make sure you have Python installed. If you don't, then you can go to python.org. You can search Python install. I have already covered in my Python tutorial for beginners. So if you want to go and check out my Python tutorial, you can go and you can install Python, pip and everything. Once you are done with installing Python and pip, you can right click on your Windows. You can go to PowerShell, and after going to PowerShell, all you have to do is to write pip install Django, and once you press enter after doing this, you'll see Django being installed on your system. So I'm gonna wait for it, and Django is getting installed on my system. It's a 7.4 MB file, which means you need to give it some time. So in the meantime, I'll talk about Django. What is Django? So Django is a web development framework which makes your life a lot easier while developing apps. So when you develop a basic website or a basic app, you need to do database design, you need to work on backend, you need to write front end, a lot of things. You need to create directories, you need to create templates. Now what Django does is Django will create a lot of directories and a lot of files beforehand for you, and it's awesome since it saves a lot of time for you. So all you have to do is focus on writing the logic and focus on writing things that are specific to your app. Now what does this mean? I'm going to be explaining everything to you in this video, so you have to just follow this video and you should be all good. As you can see that Python Django is getting installed. I'll let this Python Django install, and I'm gonna write install VS Code. Now I'm gonna install VS Code. Now you might say, what is this VS Code? Now VS Code is a general purpose code editor, and it's from Microsoft, which means it is awesome, and it's actually awesome. I'm telling you by experience, which is the reason I want you to install it. If you are on Windows, you can click on Windows installer. If you are on Mac or some other OS, you can install it for Mac or Linux or wherever you are. It's a 40 MB file, 47.9. You just have to download it and run the installer, and once you run the installer with all the default options checked, you should be good to go. Now after installing Visual Studio Code on your system, you can click on your start button and you can say Visual Studio Code, and you will be able to open Visual Studio Code on your system. After firing up Visual Studio Code, you're gonna see this welcome screen. As you can see, I have some recent projects being showed up, and I also have a start menu and help menu and customize, learn, a whole lot of good stuff. So I have to install this code runner extension to make sure that I can run my code, but even if you don't do that, it's totally fine. Now if you are a beginner with Python and you don't know how to use Python and Visual Studio Code with Python, this is the video for you. Learn Python in 1 hour. You can go through this video and come back and learn Django. But if you know how to write Python script, basic hello world Python, a little bit about Python, then you are good to go. You can follow this video. Now all I'll do is I'll come back to my Explorer and I'll close this code runner and everything. At this point in time, if I open my terminal, you can see that I have Django already installed, and in order to check it, you can type something like python -m Django -- version, and you'll see something like this. I have 2.2.2 installed, so I'm seeing 2.2.2, which is the stable version at this point in time. I'll close this window, and what I'll do is I'll create a new project, and for that I'll have to create a new directory and open it. Now you can click on open folder and you can select a folder of your choice. I'll just create a new folder and I'll say Django tutorial, and I'll just open this. Now you can also go to the folder and open command prompt and type code dot and that will fire up that folder inside your Visual Studio Code. Now I don't want to discuss Visual Studio Code much, but again I have already discussed that inside this video if you want to check it out. Now I'll make sure that you have Django installed, and also you have to make sure that you have everything set up regarding Python. You should not see any error like paper is not recognized or something is not happening. Everything should be all set. Now you can go to terminal and you can click on new terminal. That will open your new terminal and you can start a new Django project. Now you might say, how to start a new Django project? You can say Django-admin, and once you do that you can type start project. So you can say start project and you can say tudes. I am creating a new folder called tudes, but again you can call your project whatever you want. Before you press enter and execute this command, I want you to execute Django admin, just Django admin. And after you execute Django admin, you'll see something like check, compile messages, create cache table, a lot of commands, but we are at this point in time interested in this start project command. So I'll say Django admin start project, and I'll say text. I'm just calling it text. You can call it whatever you want. And after firing this command, you can go and check your directory. After executing this command, you'll see a directory being automatically created, which is called text. Now I want to mention a very important point at this point in this tutorial, and the very important point that I want to mention is that you don't have to name your Django projects upon some Python module or Python itself or test. No, you don't have to do that. Your Django project should not conflict with any built-in module or any other command, whatever the case may be. You just have to type a name which is unique. In my case I type text, and I know that text is not a built-in Python module or something, and I'm not going to mess up anything, so I am just saying text, text. Now after I run Django admin start project text, Django generated a lot of code for me and I can use that. So guys, as you guys can see that I have this text folder, and inside this text folder I have another text folder and manage.py. Now inside this text folder I have init.py, settings, urls, wsgi. Now you guys might say, what is all that? I never wrote this code. But again, this is the beauty of Django. Django generated this code for you. Now I'll come back to Visual Studio Code, and at this point I want you to just listen to me very carefully so that you know what this manage.py is and what these Python files are. Now this is a directory structure, as you guys can already see. Now what I'll do is I'll explain you one by one what all these files and this directory structure is all about. Now you can see a outer text directory. This is nothing. This is just a container for our project. Django generated a new directory, and all the files and directories that your project is a part of will be generated inside this directory. Now it's just Django thing, so you don't have to worry about why this new directory was created. Now let's come to this directory. This is your project directory. Now if I close this, there are two things. Number one, the text directory, and number two, the manage.py. Manage.py is a command line utility that you are going to use to create databases, to create migrations. I'll tell you what migrations are, so you don't have to worry at this point. But again, you need to know what manage.py is. Manage.py is simply a command line utility that is used to launch your server. It's used to create database migrations. It's used to create tables in the database, and we'll see how to do that in a minute. Now this inner directory text has some Python files inside it. I'm going to be talking about these files as well. Settings.py is nothing but all the settings of your project. So if I close this and I show you, you can see that these are Django settings that your project is going to use. Now init.py is a blank file. It is just created to tell to tell Python that this is a Python package. Text directory can be imported as a Python project. Now talking about this urls.py. urls.py is nothing but a file which contains all the URL routings. This is just to tell your Django where to go when a given URL is entered in the browser. I'll tell you how it works, and we are going to be talking about URL patterns and URL cons in few minutes. Now WSGI file is for deployment, and it is used to deploy your files on the server. Now Django provides a test server. It is also called the development server, and you can use it to launch your website on your computer. It will simply launch a development server, but again, if you are going to a production grade environment, all you have to do is use a production grade server like Apache, Nginx or something like that. Do not use this development server in production. Now I'll tell you how to launch your development server. So all you have to do is, I'll fire my terminal again and I'll say python manage.py run server. Now it says no manage.py found, so I'll do cd text because I'm outside my text directory. So if you are inside your text directory, you have access to this manage.py. So you can change your directory and make sure you have this directory as the directory where your manage.py is residing. Now all you have to do is run that command once again, and this time it launch a server. Now once the server is launched, you can copy this address and you can go to your browser and you can paste it. And once you paste this address inside your browser, you can see the install worked successfully. Congratulations. At this point, I want you to comment congratulations on this video right away and give this video a thumbs up as well. But this doesn't look like a good website. This is not something I was looking for. Wait guys, I'm gonna be showing you everything you need to know. I'll be showing you how to make this website beautiful and look like the way you want. All we'll do now at this point is go to Visual Studio Code, and we'll see how to create a new app. Now I'll fire my terminal once again. I'll show you. We saw some of the warnings here. So it's saying you have 17 unapplied migrations. I'll talk about migrations in a minute, but before that I want all of you to make sure that you understood everything regarding Django till here. I didn't tell you much till here, but again, you should be able to understand what a server is, how these things worked, which command was fired when, and once you do all that, you can see starting development server at this address. Now, the moment you access your files, you'll see something like this: get request, and this. All this is nothing but some of the get requests that are browser is making to the Django server, and a Django server is serving those files. So it's giving us a kind of logging that I have served this file and this is the file which was requested, and if there is any error, it will be shown over here. So I hope you now understand how to run server, how to launch the development inbuilt Django server. Now all we'll do is create a new app. Now you'll say, what? Wait a minute, I just created a new project. What do you mean by creating an app? I'll tell you the difference between an app and a project. In Django, a project is a collection of apps. Let us say you have a big project. You want to create a social media website, or let us say you want to create an e-commerce website. In that case, all you have to do is you have to create a project, and inside your e-commerce website, you can have many apps like blog, or you can have a shop. You can have something like social media network or review system or something. You can have different components inside one big project, which is your social media website or an e-commerce website, and you can use those apps again and again. You can plug and unplug your apps from the project whenever you want. So at this point, I just want you to know that a project is a collection of apps and nothing else. So a project must have at least one app for it to work. So this is the same app that we are going to develop here. So what I'll do is I'll create a new app. So I'll just press Ctrl+C, and in order to create an app, all you have to do is use manage.py once again. Yes, you have to type python manage.py and not run server this time. You have to say start app. Start app is a command which is used to launch a new app. Now I can name my app utilities. I am calling it utilities because I want to create some utilities for text. So I'm saying python manage.py star app utilities, and the moment I press enter, you'll see this directory will be changed and you'll have a utilities folder inside this, and we can see a db.sqlite3. I'll talk about this as well, but before that I just want to talk about utilities folder. We have this migration, we have init.py, admin, apps, models, test, views. I'll tell about each and every file. Let's start with migrations. Migrations is nothing but the database migrations, which means that if you want to create a new migration, that migration will go inside this folder. What is a migration? Migration is an information of database change. We'll talk about database in a while. For now, you can think this migrations folder as a folder which will contain the information and the changes inside the DB that we made. Now init.py is a blank file and it is there to tell Python that this is a Python package and it can be imported. Now admin.py is a file where we'll register our models. I'll tell you about models and registering models in a while. Apps.py is nothing but the name of the app, and if we want to register our app, which means that we are using this app. So inside a project we have a lot of apps. Now we have to register all the apps in the project, which means that we want to use this app as a part of this project. So you have to tell Django about that. So after that you have to go to models.py. I am explaining you what models are. Models are nothing but your database schema. These are a single source of truth about your database. I'll come back to models and we'll talk about database. Now test.py is used to write your automated tests, and this is out of scope of this tutorial. You don't have to worry about tests if you are a beginner. Now views.py is the most important file, and these are the functions that will be responsible for displaying all the views that your users are gonna see. So if somebody goes to www.programmingwithharry.com/something, let us say / message, and something shows up. So when he goes to www.programming.com/message, he will be directed to some view, and which view he will be directed to will be decided by urls.py. Now urls.py will take the user to the corresponding view, and the corresponding view will be responsible for displaying whatever the user needs to see. At a very high level, views are nothing but functions that are executed when URLs are visited. Now which URL will execute which function is decided by our urls.py, and I'll tell you how to connect all these things, but you need to know basics first, which is the reason I'm telling you everything in such great details. Now I know that you want to see something, and we have not yet made any website, but again I also want to quickly create the website, but before that I have to explain all these concepts to you. Now what I'll do is I'll collapse all of these things. So text was my folder that I created. Inside this text I created a project called text, and inside this text folder I have an app called utilities, and when I created this app I was also given a db.sqlite3, which is nothing but a database. Now what I'll do is I'll go to my utilities, and what I'll do is I'll create a urls.py file. So I'll simply say urls.py. Now why did I do that? You'll have to do this because you want to redirect your URLs from the text to the URLs in utilities. Now what does this mean? This means that when somebody types something, all the control will be given to this urls.py file, which is inside your text. What does this mean? Let us say somebody comes to your website and he goes to admin. Now after going to admin, he will be redirected to admin.site.urls. Now since this one is controlled by Django, I'm not gonna talk about this. Now all the URLs that you create needs to be taken care of by you. So what I'll do is I'll write path, and then simply I'll say utilities. So once I do that, I'll say slash, and then I'll say comma, and I'll say include, and I'm gonna explain all this very soon. Utilities.urls, and I'll save it. And before this, what I'll do is I'll just say from Django.urls import path, and after importing path I have to import include as well. Now let me explain this to you. I simply imported include and path from Django.urls. These are functions that are inbuilt to Django, and you need not worry about how they work. All you have to do is you need to worry about this one. If somebody types your website.com/utilities, he'll be taken to utilities.urls, which means that after going to utilities, your user will be taken to utilities.urls, which means that after parsing this much of your data, so I would like to use my sketchpad to make this very clear. So the thing is, we have our Django project. I'll call it project for now, and we have an app, and we can have multiple apps. In fact, we can have app 1 and we can have app 2. So associated to project, we have urls.py. It's lowercase, but that's fine, you know, you get the idea. So urls.py will have some sort of URL patterns. Let us say you have a URL pattern which is blank, and you are saying that redirect all my traffic starting from this URL to apps 1. So everything will be taken care of by app 1 now. Not apps 1, it's app 1. So everything will be taken care of by app 1 now. So if you say /some, so it'll go to project, it'll see that the URL is being taken care of by app 1. It'll go to app 1, and then it'll search for its urls.py, and then inside app 1's urls.py it will try to match the pattern. So let us say your sum is matched here. So what it'll do is it'll redirect you to the corresponding view function. So corresponding view function will be inside the views.py file. Again, you might have another URL pattern wherein you are saying blog slash, and you can say that whatever starts with blog slash should be taken care of by app 2. So what it'll do is, let us say you have your web.com/blog1 and slash let us say you have written an article on shoes. So what it'll do is it'll say, okay, we matched blog 1. Now what we'll do is we will redirect everything to apps 2, because whatever starts with blog 1 is being taken care of by app 2. How do you know that? Because in urls.py of your project, anything starting with blog 1 is being redirected to app 2. So anything that matches blog 1, and then let us say shoes is also a match inside your app 2's urls.py, you will be redirected to the corresponding view function. So this is how it works. At this point, you saw that our URL was 127.0.0.0.1. This was a URL. Now if somebody types utilities, he'll be taken to this urls.py. This is the Django file which will be responsible for passing this much of URL. Let us say he says something like /visits. Now your /visits will be searched inside your utilities URL, because by typing this line, what you are doing is you are saying that whenever somebody types utilities, the remaining of the URL should be taken care of by my utilities urls.py, which is here, which is inside my utilities app folder. Now if somebody types utilities, if somebody types this URL /utilities/visits, it will search for this visits here. So it will come here from the project urls.py, it will come to my apps urls.py. Now this is the place where I have to process my rest of the URL. So here what I'll do is I'll simply say from Django.urls import path, and then I'll say from dot import views. Why did I do that? Now I'll tell you everything, but before that I'll create a URL patterns list. It's a list, and inside this list, and it will have all your URLs you want to parse. So what I'll do is I'll say path, and path is a function, and I'll say a blank string, and then I'll say comma, I'll say views.index, and I'll say name is equal to index. I'll explain you everything, don't worry about this, I'm just typing at this point. Now what I did was I imported something called path from Django.urls, which is built in Django, and you don't have to worry about that. Then what I did was I imported my views.py file. So I said from dot import views. This way what I'll do is I'll have access to my views.py file, so I can actually say go to index function inside my views. I can point my user to the index function inside my views. I'll tell you how to do that. Now all I have to do is I'll just simply say Ctrl S. I'll save this one as well. Now my Visual Studio Code is telling me that you don't have any index function inside your views.py. So let's open views.py and create an index function. So I'll just say def index and I'll say request. Now you might say, what is this request? I'll come back to this in a while, and I'll simply say return HTTP response. And before using HTTP response, I have to import HTTP response. So I'll say from Django.http import HTTP response, and here it is. Now you might say this is a lot of code and I'm not getting it or whatever, but everything will come with practice. So all you have to do is you have to focus, and everything that I'm importing here are just Django imports. You don't have to scare yourself looking at the length of these imports or looking at the complexity of the number of lines and all. It's fairly simple, it's fairly basic. All you have to do is create an index function, and your index function is nothing but the function which will be executed when somebody comes to your URLs. I'm going to explain it once again. So I'm just saying we are at index function we created. As simple as that. So all I did was I just created an index function, and I said HTTP response, and I'll just close it, and I'll go to terminal. I'll click on new terminal, and after doing that I'll say python manage.py run server, and it says no manage.py, so I'll simply say cd text, and I'll say python manage.py because manage.py is inside my text directory. So I have to I need access to my manage.py in order to run python manage.py run server. It's trying to run server for me, and I will give it some time. When I see some error, it's because I misspelled URL patterns, so I'll call it URL patterns, and the moment I save, you can see that it's automatically reloading it. This is because Django has a functionality to reload the server automatically when it sees some change. As you can see that I have my server started. I'll copy this URL and I'll show you something, and I'll explain it to you step by step. So I'll simply say 127.0.0.1:8000, which is my root website domain, and I'll simply say I'll just go to my urls.py. Now I'll explain it to you how it works. Your project is text. Inside your text is a file urls.py. Listen to me very carefully, as it is going to be the most important part of the tutorial. urls.py is inside my text. So inside my redundant text folder, this folder is just simply a folder that I created to host my text and utilities folder. This is a simple folder which has nothing to do with Django. Now this is my Django project, which is called text. This is my Django app, which is called utilities. db.sqlite and manage.py is also a part of my Django app and project. Now your Django control will go inside your text urls.py, which is your project's urls.py. It'll go inside this. It'll see if there is some utilities folder. If there is some utilities path. So if you go to /utilities, so if you go to simply called / if you go to something simply called text, it'll say page not found, because you don't have anything to handle a blank URL, but you do have something to handle utilities. So if I go to utilities, it'll simply go to my utilities.urls, which means that it will go to my utilities urls.py, which is here. So it will go to this urls.py. Let me open this urls.py. The moment I open this urls.py, I have a path, a blank string, views.index, and name is equal to index. This is nothing but a URL pattern, and this URL pattern is blank, which means if I type nothing after utilities, I should be seeing my VRAtIndex function we created. Where did this come from? My Django control said, okay, there is nothing after utilities, which means you are good to execute index function from views. And this is a friendly name that we gave to our URL pattern. And this is nothing but index. So this is a friendly name that we gave to our URL patterns. Now views.index is here. So it will say, all right, I am inside my index now. What's there inside this function? Oh, there is a return HTTP response. And this is the text that I have to return as an HTTP response. So you'll see we are at index function we created. So you are here. So here you'll see an index function being created. So this is all that you need to know about URL cons and URL patterns. Now I want to mention the arguments of path. Path is a function. Inside this function, we gave 3 arguments. In fact, path can take a max of 4 arguments. 2 of these 4 arguments are required and 2 of these arguments are optional. The required ones are route and view, and the optional ones are quarks and name. Now root is nothing but the string that you want to be matched with the URL that the user has entered, and the second argument view is nothing but the function that you want Django to execute when somebody has successfully matched this URL pattern. Once we get a URL pattern match, the function is executed and you are taken to whatever that function wants you to take to. The best part is you can do anything with Django. You can make users download files, you can create a zip and download it, you can create a CSV and give them as a download, and there are simply tons of things that you can do using Django. We'll be covering most important out of those in this tutorial. Alright guys, so this is the time when we'll start to actually create a website. So now that you know how URLs work, now that you know how views work, now you have a basic understanding. I want you to again listen to me very carefully. We have a text folder. Inside that we have a text project. Text is simply this text is simply a folder, but this text is my Django project, and this utilities is an app inside my text project. Now inside this utilities app I have a bunch of files and folders, and outside this utilities app I have a command line utility which is called manage.py, and also I have a database which is db.sqlite tree. I want you to run this command, python manage.py make migrations. Now I know you might say, why should I run this? Now again, as you can see, I am inside my Django tutorial. I need to cd into my text folder. I need to cd into the folder where my manage.py is. So this is not going to work as you saw. So I have to cd inside my text folder. So this path, this full path should contain manage.py. So what I'll do now is I'll say python manage.py make migrations. You might say, what is that? What does that make migrations mean? Make migrations will simply change your database. Will not change your database actually. It will store the information about changes in the database. That might sound tricky. Let me explain it once again. So when you go to models.py, you have some database models. Models are Python classes, and these Python classes have information on how your database is structured, which tables are contained in your database, and how you want Django to store your data. So after you run python manage.py make migrations, your Django will actually make migrations, which means it will create some files inside this migrations folder, and it will store the information on the tables that you created. But for now I'm not creating any models. So after python manage.py make migrations command is ran in the terminal, I want to run python. I have to click here first, python manage.py migrate. Now When I run this command python manage.py migrate, it'll actually go to my database and start writing there. It'll start making changes to my database. Now since there were no migrations, I did not write any database model or any database class for this models for this app, but it ran some migrations as you saw. Why did it do that? It did that because Django needs some of its database for its internal usage. When you go to settings.py, you'll see some of the, I'll show you, wait. When you go to settings.py, you'll see some of the registered apps like some of the installed apps like Django.contrib.content type, sessions, messages, static files, auth, which is the Django's authentication system. Now all these things need some data to be stored in the database, and these migrations are all about them. So what it's actually doing is it's actually creating the tables in the database so that Django can work correctly. Now you don't have to worry much about it, you just have to run this command. But again, for every change you make in your models.py or your database, you have to come back here, you have to make migrations, and then you have to migrate. Now you might ask question, why do we have two commands, python manage.py make migrations and python manage.py migrate? Why can't these two commands be merged into one so that I can just run that command and that can create my migrations and also migrate? Now sometimes you just want to create migrations, which means you want to store the information inside the migrations folder of your app, and you actually don't want Django to go to your database and write. In that case, you just make migrations. But if you want your migrations to get applied, or when you want your migrations to be written to the database, you will run python manage.py migrate. So this is how it works. So for now we just ran it to get rid of this warning that we were getting. So python manage.py run server. So when I do that, you will see that I have no warning. So I'm just giving it some time. It sometimes takes some time, but now you can see that I don't have any warning that you have unapplied migrations. So if you remember, we were getting a warning called you have unapplied migrations, please apply them or something. So now we have successfully applied the migrations and we are good at this point in time. Now what I also want you to do is go to your settings and add 2 lines. So we have this static URL string here. I want you to add something else here, and that is your media. So if you want to manage media using Django, so just write manage media here. This is just a Python command, nothing to do with actual Django thing. So media underscore root. So in case I want to store some kind of media like videos or something, I can store it here. So I'll just simply do os.py.join and I'll say base dir. So if I say base dir and I'll join it with media, so I'll say media. Also what I'll do is I'll type media underscore URL is equal to and slash media. So you just have to do this if you want to serve media using your Django app. So I just wanted to let you know about this. Now what I'll do is I'll go to my views and I'll create some more views. Now that you know how URLs work, we can create our views. Now we'll go to our urls.py from our project, and I want to remove this utilities. Why do I want to do that? I want to do that because I don't want to type this utilities. What does that mean? Let me explain it to you. Let me open my terminal, and it says the media URL setting must end with a slash. So I think we made a mistake here. I should be writing a slash. Let me write a slash here. So I solved this issue here. So now my Django server is reloading. Let it reload. So now it has done reloading. So what I'll do is I'll copy this and I'll go to my browser, and now if I type this, it says page not found, and I don't want that. I don't want to type utilities again and again, and I don't want to do that. I just want to type my URL and I expect my Django to take me to the corresponding view. So all you have to do is you just have to remove this utilities, and if you do that, and your server will reload in some time, and after that simply going to the root URL should take you to the view. So I'm expecting it to reload. It's still reloading. You'll have to give it some time to reload. So now it's done reloading. So if I reload my page, I can see the view without actually having to type /utilities in my URL pattern. So now what I'll do is I'll go to my views and I can create as many views as I want. And also I don't have to touch this text urls.py. If you remember, text was our project and utilities was our app. So what I've done is I've said that whenever somebody comes to urls.py from our project, redirect them to utilities urls.py. So what will happen is when somebody says any kind of URL, say somebody says your website which is 127.0.0.1:8000, then it will say to utilities urls.py that hey, please handle this URL. So it'll come here and it'll be handled here. So now since you can see that the empty path is being redirected to our index folder, to our index function in our views.py, I see this. So if I copy this index function and let us say I create a processed function, so what I'll do is in my index view I will be serving some kind of text box wherein user can type some text, and then I will do some processing on that text, and I'll take them to the processed view, and I'll just say we are at processed function we created. So I'll just Control S it, and what I'll do is I'll simply make another URL pattern for processed. I'll simply call it I'll give it a friendly name called processed, and also I'll say views.processed, and here I'll simply say /processed, and let my Django server reload, and after it's done reloading we'll actually go to the browser and check whether it works. So if I go to this page I should be seeing what I was seeing before, but if I type processed, I think there's something I've made some mistakes. Let me check it. So name is equal to processed, the current path processed didn't match any of these, so I just have to check what's wrong. So I should not say /processed, I should simply say processed, and it should work now. So as you can see that it has started working for me again. So if I go to my root I can see index, and if I go to my /processed I can see my process function. So we have created 2 endpoints, and we can create as many endpoints as we want for our website. But again, I want to point out something. You guys must be thinking that we cannot serve our website using HTTP response like this, because again if I do that I'll have to type a lot of HTML inside this string, and that's obviously not feasible. So what I'll show you right now is that you can type some HTML inside this string. So I'll simply do something like this, bold tag, and I'll say this is a bold tag, and I'll do something like this, and I'll just simply make them triple quotes so that these are valid Python strings. So if I go to my / which is the index, I can see this is a bold tag, and if I take you to the page source of this page, you can see it's actually rendering the HTML that I gave it. Similarly, I can put my entire HTML page here and expect my Django to render it correctly. But again, this is not a correct way to do that. So what is the correct way to do that? Is there any way in Django wherein I can actually have HTML files and I can directly edit my HTML files and I can see the output on the screen? So the answer to this question is yes, Django does have such kind of functionality, and I'll tell you how to enable that functionality. So all you have to do is you have to go to your app folder and you have to add a directory called static. Make sure you enter your static directly correctly, and after going in your app folder you have to create a directory called static, and you have to create another directory called templates. Now these are the 2 directories that you have to create. Now you might ask that why did we do that? Why did we create these static and templates directory? So the answer is that you have to do this because you want to serve static HTML pages, and you might as well serve some kind of other static content like HTML, CSS, JS and other kind of files. So we have to create these 2 directory. But what might amaze you is that you will have to create another directory called utilities. So what I'm doing is I'll say utilities. Now you might say, Harry, why did you create a static folder and then you create a utilities folder inside the static folder? Why did you do that? Why can't we have a static files directly inside a static folder? So the answer is you might have some conflicting files from different apps and you don't want them to conflict with each other. So if you request a file from one app, you want it to be in that app itself. So your project might have more than 5 to 6 apps as well, and in case you have multiple apps inside your Django project, you don't want to mess things up. So you have to tag your static directory with the name of the app that you are in. So this is how it works. So similarly, we'll do the same thing for templates. I'll create a folder called utilities, and inside this I'll create my files like index.html, or we can say compare.html or about.html. Whatever file you want to create, you can create inside your utilities folder. Again, any kind of static content, I'll have it inside static/utilities, and inside utilities I'll have some CSS, JS, whatever I want. I can create as many directories and as many files inside this as possible. So now what I'll do is I'll simply go to getbootstrap.com. Now you might say, what is that? What is Bootstrap? So Bootstrap is simply it's open source toolkit for developing with HTML, CSS and JavaScript. So you can quickly prototype your ideas, and I'll show you what it means. So you have to go to documentation, and all you have to do is just copy the starter template and just paste it here and save it, and you can go to views.py. And now I want to show you how you can actually serve your index.html from your app. So all you have to do is you have to import a render from Django.shortcuts. We have already done that. So what I'll do is I'll simply say return a render. So return a render, and inside render I'll give first argument as a request, and you have to do that. There's no reason why we do this, but again, this is Django syntax and you have to type request. And the second argument is nothing but utilities/index.html, and the moment I save this, my Django server should reload. Let me check if everything is good, and everything seems to be good. It's reloading, and let me simply reload this, and you can see it says template does not exist. So I have some issues here. So let me check what the problem is. So I'll just check my directory structure once again. The reason we see this error is because we don't have our dirs inside our settings.py set. So what you have to do is you have to go to your settings.py, and you have to actually go to your templates, and inside your dirs you have to enter utilities, which is the name of your app, and you have to type utilities/templates. I'll simply save it, and I'll see whether my server is reloading. It's actually reloading, and I'll give it some time to reload. And since my server is done reloading, I'll simply go back and simply reload, and you can see that I have my hello world, which was simply the Bootstrap template. So what you can actually do with Bootstrap is you can go to this components link, and you can use all these bunch of components. Now what I'll do is I'll create a simple text app. So now I know Bootstrap, so I can easily create whatever I want, but I want you guys to use whatever kind of front end stuff you want to use. Now I'll simply close this one, and I'll say that all you have to do is you have to say div, and you have to say class is equal to you have to say container, and inside this container you can actually have whatever you want. So what else you can do is you can go to these examples, and you can or what you can do is you can come here and go to Navbars, and inside this Navbars you'll find a bunch of cool Navbars. I'll simply copy this one and I'll paste it inside my body, and I'll simply save it, and I'll reload this, and you can see that I've got this navbar. I'll simply reset, and I can now edit this navbar. I'll simply say text processing, and I'll simply say home process text, I want you to experiment with all this. I don't want to edit text in this video. You can change these to whatever you want and you have this awesome website. Again, you can also change the theme. You can make it dark, and you have to simply copy the corresponding code to make it dark. So in this tutorial, I don't want to focus much on making it dark or changing text or all kind of those stuff. But what I'll do is I'll go to forms, and I'll go to forms here, and I'll grab a form element wherein I can actually copy the text area wherein a person can type the text. So I'll simply say your text processing meet. So let us say this is a text processing website which is used to process text, and I just changed the title of this website. Now what I'll do is I'll simply grab some form stuff, and I am going to search some sort of text area wherein someone can type the text. So I'm not finding some, so what I'll do is I'll simply say text area. I'll search, and let me find some text area. I have actually found a text area. I'll copy this one, and I'll go to my container, and I'll simply paste it. Control S. I can right click and format document to make it look beautiful and to get the indents at place. So as you can see that I have this text area, and this is all I want. I don't want all these all these divs and these other sort of check buttons or whatsoever. I'll reload this, and you can see I have this example text area. What I'll do is I'll use an h1 tag, and I'll say h1, and I'll simply say enter the text to remove punctuations, or let us say enter the text to capitalize. So I want to simply capitalize the text that is entered by the user, and I'll simply reload this, and you can see enter the text to capitalize, and I'll remove this example text area label. So enter your text. I'll simply do this so somebody can enter the text. This is the text or whatever you want to call it. Oops, I pressed Ctrl S by mistake. So what I'll do now is I'll go to my Bootstrap once again, and I'll grab a button, and button will simply be the element which when clicked can submit the form. So this is submit, and I'll simply reload this once again, and you can see we have a submit button. So I'll also remove these three buttons because they don't look good to me. So I'll say home, process text, and again I want to remove this drop down too. So let me comment it. So Control/ is this shortcut to comment the tags or whatever lines you want to comment. Also I want to call this comment this out, in fact. So I commented it out. Let me reload it, and it looks pretty clean now. So somebody can enter the text, and they can actually submit it, and they can see the processed text on the screen. So this is the agenda of this website. So I want to make it little bit taller. So what I'll do is I'll simply inspect, and I'll copy this. I right click, edit as HTML, and I'll copy this text area and go paste it back to my form. So I'm just finding out where my text area is. So it's here. So what I'll do is I'll simply paste my text area here. What I'll do now is simply say action is equal to, so I'll say action is equal to / process, and method is equal to post. So post is a form submission method. So I'll go to process. So, and also I have this name is equal to and ID is equal to, so I'll make it text and text. So everything will be text here. So I'll say name is equal to text, and I'll say ID is already text, so name is already text. So that's it. So what I'll do is Control S, and I'll go to my views, and I'll run this processed function. So what I'll do is I'll save it, and again what I'll do is go to my urls.py, and I'll simply make it process, and what process will do is redirect it to processed. So what I'll say is I'll say if request dot method equal to post, which means that if somebody has made a post request, what you have to do is you have to grab the text by saying request dot post, and you can say text, and I'll simply print my text to check whether I'm getting my text here or not. So here's my terminal, it's reloading. Let me give it some time to reload. So what I'll do now is I'll type something here and I'll click submit, and it's not submitting the form for some reason. Let me reload it, and I'll type something and it's not submitting the form. Let me see what the problem is. So what I'll do is I'll say type is equal to submit, and type is equal to I'll just say type is equal to submit, not button. I'll say type is equal to submit. I'll save it, and it'll reload my server. It'll not reload my server actually. When you save an HTML file, it doesn't reload the server for some reason. So I'll simply say this is and click submit, and it said CSRF verification failed. So all you have to do to get rid of this error is simply pass a CSRF token. So what you have to do is simply say CSRF underscore token, and you have to just type this. And if you want to read more about CSRF tokens, you can read them online, but in this video I'm not gonna be covering that. So all you have to do is type something and click submit, and it's again failing for some reason. Let me check what the problem is. So the problem is that you have to put this inside the form. So I'm putting it inside the form, and let me save it and let me reload my page, and I'll simply say page and submit. And this time we got this page printed here because we actually printed it. So what I'll do is I'll simply capitalize it in using Python. So what I'll do is I'll simply say that processed is equal to text dot capitalize, and this will simply capitalize the strings. So dot capitalize will actually make the first character as the capital letter. So what you'll do is you should make it upper instead of capitalize, and you can say HTTP response and simply processed. So I'll save it, and I'll simply go back to my home page, and I'll say please make it all caps, and I'll submit, and you can see it made it all caps. So you can create awesome websites using Django. This was just an introduction. I hope you liked this video, and also you were able to successfully understand how I included Bootstrap, how I did all the stuff that I did in this video. And I'll be coming up with full Django course, so make sure you subscribe to this channel. But this video was just an introduction to Django. I hope you like this video. If you want to watch Python course, you can go and watch my Python 1 video. In this channel I'll be uploading Python course, Django course, and a lot of free stuff. So if you want to subscribe, you can subscribe it right now. Make sure to like this video, and I hope you understand everything that I tried to explain in this video. Also, if you have to explore something, or you think that something could be done in Django and you want to search it, you can actually go to Django Documentation. Django's documentation is actually very good, and all you have to do is you can go to Google search, and you can say that how to, I'm just giving you an example, how to make user download CSVs in Django, and you can say Django docs, and you'll be redirected to some Django documentation page wherein they have explained actually how to output CSV with Django. So you can actually try to copy this code, run it, and you can experiment it. Sometimes there are tons of ways to do the same thing, so you have to figure out which one is the best for you. Also you can start reading the tutorial. They have a tutorial on Django's homepage. You can go to the homepage and click get started with Django, and you can click on take the tutorial. They have a tutorial wherein they have explained how a Pulse app work. After watching this video, I hope you'll be able to understand what they mean by different terminologies they are gonna use. So give this video a thumbs up, and I'm gonna be coming back with a Django course on this channel, so make sure to subscribe, and if you haven't already hit the bell icon, you can do that as well. So thank you so much guys for watching this video, and I will see you next time.